welcome to another exciting edition of the Credit Union Connection. I have my special guest here, Jason Vitug, and he is into so many different things. I'm just going to let him introduce himself. So, Jason, welcome.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here, Sarah. Yeah, so to get some context on why I'm here, I am a former credit union executive. I'm someone who started as a teller in the credit union world and found my way as VP of Marketing and Business Development. And so I am entrenched in that credit union philosophy, and the DNA is encoded. That credit union DNA is encoded in my genes. So what I'm currently up to, I found myself as an accidental entrepreneur. So I founded a financial wellness website, frugal.com. In addition to becoming a best-selling New York Times, I have to say this because it's so exciting, best-selling New York Times reviewed author for my first book, You Only Live Once. And I have a second upcoming book releasing called Happy Money, Happy Life, a multi-dimensional approach to health, wealth, and financial freedom. Now, Sarah, we talked about my epic road trip. That's kind of one of the big things that I'm working on, which is to break the money taboo, talk about health, wealth, and everything in between, and taking the conversations locally and hopefully with the goal to raise awareness on a national campaign. And that's what I've been up to. And hopefully we can dive into some really interesting stuff today.
Yeah, now obviously credit unions are part of the book tour, right?
Yes. That's kind of one of the focus. Like, I wanted to connect local financial resources to these local bookstores, have these conversations about money, because I think now I've learned this. It's especially in these times, people are looking for resources that are accessible. There's a lot of virtual online stuff, but it goes down to it. It doesn't matter which generation, we're looking for something that's a bit more localized. And I think credit unions fit the bill. And I'm working with a ton of credit unions across the country to make this happen.
And you've also touched on something, and we talked about this a minute ago. You touch on something that has been, until relatively recently, taboo, and that's the connection between mental health and financial wellness.
Yeah. So after my first book was released, I was offered a second book, and I wanted to talk about mental health as it relates to finances. And that was an even more taboo subject than money. And so I knew that there was a relation. And so just to kind of give an example, when people are financially stressed, they have debt, they have credit issues, or they're just living paycheck to paycheck, we know, we associate that financial stress to mental distress. We know people are facing mental challenges when there are financial issues. But what I've learned through my lived experience and through research is that people who are suffering from mental health issues or experiencing mental crisis, they often make bad financial decisions that affect their financial health. And so there is an inverse relationship. And when we had talked about that, and I wanted to explore that a bit further. I wanted to explore the mental, the emotional aspect of our well-being and how that relates to money and that inverse relationship. Because sometimes when we're trying to solve the issue of debt, we don't realize the challenge is really understanding our relationship with money, understanding our relationship to other aspects of ourselves that's influencing our financial decisions. And so I think when I talk to credit unions, they're like, yeah, we're doing these seminars, we're doing these workshops, and people just don't get it. We have this amazing budgeting workshop. We have this amazing how to increase your credit score. No one's attending, no one's engaging. And I go, at the heart of it, people know what they need to do with money. They know they shouldn't spend more than their paycheck. They know they should pay their bills on time. What's affecting their decisions is something much more than financial calculations. It's the human element. It's the mental condition. It's the emotional health. It's what's happening physically in their bodies. It's what's happening at work. And so I approach everything holistically. And that's the message that I have shared for almost a decade. And right now, in the times that we're in, it is the message that people are resonating with. And I think it's a great opportunity that we can have with credit unions to have these conversations with members in credit unions in the communities.
Yeah, that I totally agree. And it works both ways too. Mental health, of course, can impact how you handle your money. If you have
Hmm.
anxiety or if you're severely depressed and you want to feel better, you do a little retail therapy, or vice versa. You get into a financial situation, say you lose job or whatever, and all of a sudden the money's tight, and that affects your mental health. And so I think it's really interesting to explore, and I'm going to connect that with the original reason we connected. We were talking about credit unions and how they reach out to their members, and awareness. And one of the things that credit unions often rely on, and it's easy to do, is our rates are this, or our rates are better. And while that logically makes sense, that's not necessarily what people are looking for, right? That's not how
You're
they emotionally
absolutely
connect.
you're absolutely right. If you are chasing the rate shopper, chances are they will leave when the next rate at the other financial institution is better. What you want to do is build the brand connection, the brand loyalty, and that's going to be the mental, the emotional connection. And so when I hear credit unions talk about, oh, we have better rates, we have better this, and that, and I'm like, well, I can tell you right now, there are high yield savings accounts from other financial institutions online that have much better rates than you. And so if you are trying to compete with these online banks, through rates, then you're missing an opportunity to connect with your members and to connect with their family and to connect with potential members in the communities that you serve. And it's not the rates. The rate is just that feature. So I want people to think about, okay, higher rates is a benefit because compared to others. And no, it's just a feature of the account that you're offering. What you're looking at is something a bit more. So you want to look at the value of your offering, and that means when you're talking about value of the products that you're offering and how you're trying to communicate, market that, you really have to look at the tone of the message. You got to look at how it's going to resonate with them mentally, emotionally, and that's far beyond just talking about numbers.
Absolutely. And when you make those emotional connections, and uh, you can make that digitally, of course, but also when you have the opportunity in person, then you can make an even deeper connection because you're working with that person, then you're listening to them. It's not, most of them don't say, oh my God, my car loan rate is 16% or whatever. They say, I don't have $600 to make the car loan. It's what putting yourself in the member's shoes um versus the flat numbers that we are kind of ingrained and trained ourselves to talk about.
Yeah, and I think specifically too, I've had conversations with, I mean, see, I'm a big believer in trying not to use generational demographics, right? Because I think we've learned a lesson with millennials and Generation Y. I'm an older millennial, but like we've learned a lesson, and I'm a big believer in life stages. Like people have different life stages, and so I remember back in 2015, people talking about millennials, Gen Y, weren't buying cars, weren't buying homes, and they were going to ruin the economy because they were late in terms of their generation compared to other generation in achieving these financial milestones or these life milestones. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic, that period, a lot of millennials had the money and the means to buy cars and to buy houses. And what happened in the market? Everything went up. And so, but what I share that example to say that when we're thinking about generations and okay, we need to talk to Gen Xers this way, Gen Y this way, and Gen Z this way. Now, when you're having actual deep, thoughtful conversations with millennials and Gen Zs, they're talking about my life stage. Okay, you can't talk to me about buying a house in my 20s because my values are different. My parents taught me differently. I have a different life stage. So that's an opportunity when we start thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, someone in their 30s could be in a life stage of buying their first home, similar to someone in their 20s could be in the life stage of buying their home. And then when we just pigeonhole everyone to be like, okay, well, this generation is on this stage and this generation, like it doesn't become a fruitful conversation. What happens then? we focus on the numbers. We focus on their age as the number, and then we focus on the rates and the terms, as opposed to how is someone feeling? And again, how is someone feeling at that stage of their life? What does that next stage look like? And how can a credit union come in and help them fulfill that life stage, as opposed to saying, well, you're in your 20s, you're not thinking about this. And because I can certainly tell you, I have thousands of people who are in their 20s thinking about early retirement, thinking about purchasing their homes or starting a business. And I still see credit unions talking about, oh, yeah, we're going to help them with their credit score. We're going to help them purchase their car. And I'm like, they'll get to that, but have these meaningful conversations. And when the moment comes, they're going to come to the credit union to have these financial dialogues.
So I love your point about the credit score. The credit score is important, but it's so ethereal. It's not something that the human brain can latch onto, like the excitement of possibly buying your first home, so that you can set yourself up to possibly having a family. There's like more emotional ties that you can make that are more important when you're there for the member holistically, to get back to your original point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's so vital for us to look at what the members are looking to accomplish, as opposed to focusing specifically just on the financial aspects of it, because they can get the financial parts online. It's very easy to do that. I know how to improve my credit score because I'm following this influencer, or I'm going to these websites. What you want to do is not necessarily compete with that piece. What you want to do is tie in the emotional component that tends to be missing. And what that is having these conversations about, well, how do you envision your life? What elements of your life do you see? And then these conversations are going to lead into, I want to see myself owning a home in this neighborhood that I've always wanted to as a kid. I want to see myself traveling the world. I want to see myself in this profession. And that might not, you might look at it, it's like, okay, well, how do we tie in the credit union into that conversation? Well, all of that stuff has a financial component to it. Owning that dream home has the financial component of the mortgage and the down payment and the credit score. Same thing as owning a car. The same thing with working at your dream profession. There's a conversation of having enough savings, emergency fund, to be able to, let's say, leave a toxic work environment for a few months in order to explore a different career path. So there is a financial component that you can have, or financial conversation you could have when you're talking about these big goals and these big dreams. And what happens is that when you, and I don't want to use the word lure, but when you lure in the members and these people into this conversation about talking about their hopes and their dreams, I'm telling you, they're going to come back to you. They're going to come back to you when they are having difficulty in achieving those hopes and achieving those dreams. And so when we're just so tied and focused on the numbers, I mean, that is a disservice to people, and disservice to the credit union in terms of truly people helping people, that motto.
Right. It's not people helping people with their money, right? It's people helping people.
Help people.
And I think it's a much more sophisticated sales and marketing and branding kind of level than a lot of credit unions have worked toward in the past. So definitely different aspect there. Want to move also back to a point you had mentioned, about credit unions being more nimble, more agile, able to adapt and change to these types of things. And so you used to work in credit unions.
Yes.
And we see a lot of people who have worked in credit unions, still work around credit unions, still love credit unions, still, part of the movement as an outsider, if you will. But because of the way things are, people are leaving credit unions, young professionals who want a different path on their career trajectory and can't find it in credit unions. So I don't know, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I want to give it some context as well, because we connected years ago. I want people to understand we connected years ago. You were one of the first supporters within the credit union world to support a person that left the credit union industry to pursue their passion, their dream. And and so we reconnected when you wrote this really awesome article on and it resonated with me so much so because I started thinking about some of the frustrations that I've had working in the industry. And so I am a big credit union supporter. I love credit unions. I'm an advocate for credit unions. I work in the periphery and I continue to espouse the virtues of credit unions because I truly believe in the philosophy. And I'm fortunate to work with some awesome credit union leaders. What's interesting is that in this most recent experience of talking about the 50 state tour and going out of my own bubble of these really innovative credit union leaders, I'm having conversations with many people all across the country, and I'm becoming triggered in terms of why. It's triggered in terms of I'm beginning to remember the memories that I repressed of my frustrations working in the credit union industry. And that had a lot to do with the fact that I was young, naive, but I was passionate and I was willing to do whatever it took to help grow my credit union, to help the movement in its entirety, but also finding feeling the frustration of like the very slowness of progress, the feeling there was a lot of talking versus action taking, and a lot of congratulatory remarks amongst each other, as opposed to actually doing the work that's necessary to be congratulated by the people most important, the members, the community,
Right.
the people at large. And so I started remembering this thing, Sarah, and I was like, okay, something's going on here because I think there's a repressed memory. And then realizing part of it, I love the work that I did. I love the people I work with. I am really good friends with my CEO at the last credit union that I worked for. And but I've also now come to realize why I left the industry as a young professional who was going to become the successor CEO. And that just had a lot to do with the 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 inflexibility that I was experiencing. That there was, again, a lot of talk, but there was a lot of inflexibility. There's a lot of like, well, we can't do that just yet, or we can't do this. And I understand there are some constraints. I understand that credit unions have survived because of some of those constraints, are and self like created constraints, not to go or not to, push against the boundaries or think outside of the box. There's things that I want to note that, but I also felt the frustration as someone who was young and rising at the credit union industry. I think I was one of the Q's top 10 or something like that back in the day, and realizing that frustration of wanting to help but feeling stifled. And of course, I just wanted to do something else, something different, and that's why I left the credit union world. But I couldn't leave the credit union world. What's that saying? You can take the boy out of the credit union, but you can't take the credit union out of the boy. That was me. That was me. And even in the work that I do now, I get an opportunity to talk with a lot of young professionals who reach out to me. And they reach out to me because they realize, they go, wow, you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, you travel the world, and you have a credit union connection, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have a credit union tie. And so they want to know my experience. They want to know if what they're experiencing is very unique or different, because they'll come to me and like, Jason, I want to, you glossed over this, but why did you leave the credit union? And what was that? And I would explain there are other external, there's other circumstances, right? We're holistic. But part of it too, when I'm looking at the professional dimension, happy work that I talk about in the book, that professional dimension, I don't believe I was fully being recognized, fully being appreciated, and also some of my ideas were not um, fully being accepted in that way. Certainly, when I was a VP, was different, right? I had a bit more control. I was an executive, so I had a bit more control. That wasn't the case, but my for early on credit union experience was that. Also, the reason why I left that credit union and went to a different credit union, and I see this with the YPs, they're telling and they're sharing how much passion they have for the industry, how much more they want to give. I mean, you're talking about, and I want to be, they can work elsewhere and make more money, But because they have bought into the credit union mission, they are forcing themselves, and a lot of them feel this way, they're forcing themselves to remain the course because they feel that one day they're going to be heard, that one day that their idea, which they feel is going to revolutionize their credit union and the industry, will actually be funded and supported and pushed out. They feel this because, again, it's that hope, it's that dream. And then all of a sudden, boom, it doesn't happen. And there's like, oh, it's not the right time. We didn't budget for it. There have been other changes in the organization,
Mhm.
or what's happening in the community or in society. It's just not the right time. It's just not the right time. And after a while, you tell a gung-ho young professional who has the energy and willing to take a lower pay compared to the other industry, you tell them enough time, they're going to say, peace, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And that's what they're telling me. And I tell them, listen, I'm going to try to help you understand how to be better with money, because what I need is for you to stay within this industry that we both love. Because if I can help you become financially independent, remain in the industry, perhaps you won't worry about other aspects and be able to change it from the outside, from the inside out. And so I've had these conversations, and I'm sure, like, if you want to keep the talent, if you want to keep the energy, there has to be a way to recognize them and allow them to take on their project and become the project managers of it, support them, fund it, and figure out the lessons learned and how to be more nimble, how to be more agile, how to be more flexible. And I think that's what you do, because the studies show people are willing to, I believe it's like 20% of their salary, willing to exchange 20% of their salary to do work that's a bit more meaningful. And just to think about that, 20% of most of our salary is housing expense, not including utilities. And so people are willing to exchange their housing, to in order to do work that's a bit more fulfilling. And I think when I look at these YPs in the credit union world, I mean, these are your assets, and there's so many ways that you can do to support them. And they're not just really looking for income; they're looking for an opportunity to show you what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not so much a young professional anymore, but
Yeah.
at a previous, employer, I I was always kind of gung ho, wanted to try different things, all this stuff, and I got pushback. And eventually, maybe a couple years later, I get a comment from one of the people above me, and they said, everybody's talking about how much easier you've become to work with. I was like,
No.
it's not that I'm easier to work with, it's that you beat it out of me. It's like I am no longer as passionate about certain things because what's the point, right? And
Yeah.
so you don't want to get these young people who are raring to go and do these things, may not be able to do it full scale, but try some things. Geez, I mean, as a board
Yeah.
member at a credit union, we've told our executive team, set aside a pocket of money to experiment. Like
Yeah.
that is what
That's
it is
exactly
for.
it.
Yeah.
And and I want to recommend people read your latest article, and I know
Oh,
you'll
I
link
think.
it because
Yeah, of course.
because it hit me hard, especially on the last piece of it, where this is the time for credit unions to show up. This is the time for credit unions to show how they are different by showing the difference in the actions that they take. Whereas a lot of financial institutions, a lot of fintechs, they are scaling back because they're afraid of what's happening in the market. Well, some credit unions are going, well, we don't know what's going on. We're afraid to. We're going to scale back because banks and fintechs are scaling back. But listen, I want all the credit union folks to understand this. If you've been championing the CU difference, if you've been saying credit unions are different, we operate differently, we are made of something different, why are we looking at big banks? Why are we looking at fintechs to determine how we're going to reach out to potential members or reach or talk to these existing members? And so I want you to think about that. There's an opportunity to step up, to show up and to spend the money in increasing your awareness within the communities that you serve, because people are suffering. And there are people who are doing well, but they still need your resources. Do that. And that's how I connected and was so excited to connect with you after reading that, because I was like, there's someone else who is saying you need to show up. You need to just test things out. This is the time to spend some money on some branding, on some awareness campaigns. And you know what? And if you think no one is listening, well, this is the perfect time to test things out, because if you mess up, it doesn't work out. Hey, no one was listening, but I can guarantee you've learned something new, and then you're going to be able to pivot. You're going to be able to reassess and create something so much better. And that is what I am challenging credit unions. And I think in your article, that's what you're challenging them to do. And I was like, I got to cheer you on, and it's needed. It's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so ideal for credit unions, particularly because of their not-for-profit business structure. They don't need to return money to investors. They don't need to lay people off to make their bonuses, for the invest. I just taking advantage of that and leading with it during a financial time of financial uncertainty. It's so critical, and businesses who have, it's research time and again, businesses that market through uncertainty come out far better on the other side. And credit unions just need to keep the lights on, essentially. I mean, yes, you got to make a profit, but
you're right. And do you know, studies have shown most millionaires are made during periods of financial uncertainty as well. And so that's because people end up looking at their resources. They're looking at certain specific opportunities. And so for me, looking at research and data, that surprised me. So I had to look at a ton more data to see that this wasn't just something, it was an anomaly. And then realizing when you're looking at the Great Depression, looking at the Great Recession. So the Great Recession in our most recent history, that we created more millionaires after the Great Recession than any other period of time. And then when you think about like how so, I mean, that was a period of uncertainty and housing flux. Well, people who had the means, who had the resources, the connections, they took advantage of the meltdown in the market. They took advantage of the mortgage crisis. And then eventually, as things rebound, because everything does rebound, they were poised financially to become the next millionaires. So for me, when I talk to people about the uncertainty in the markets today, I tell them, if you have the means, even if you have the small amount of means, this is an opportunity to create the future, or the foundation, set the foundation for a prosperous future version of yourself. And to take this on the credit union world, as you mentioned, this is an opportunity for credit unions to invest in their branding and their awareness, so people understand in financial crisis, credit unions have stood the test of time. They are relevant. They are exciting. They are places that we actually want to do business with. They're not going to remind us that how bad we are with money or how bad the economy is. They're going to support us by giving us hope in the darkest of times. And we could do that. Credit unions can do that by giving more experiences. And again, that goes back to the emotions. That goes back to the thoughts that you can foster with members. And when I share what hope is hearing other people's experiences. And so when credit unions can share the experiences of others in a way that is exciting and engaging, well, guess what? You're then showing people hope. And we can do more of that. And so I encourage credit unions to think outside the box. I encourage credit unions to let their YPs, their young professionals who are overzealous, who are passionate, let them run with a project and give them the guideline and the support and say, just come back to us. and let us know what happened and how we can make this better next time around, or how we can approach this problem that you've learned about differently. Because think about this. There are many people who complain, but there are very few people who complain and offer a solution.
Mhm.
These young professionals, they see a problem and they're just not telling you about the problem. They have a solution for that problem. And many executives quash that. And so that's why there is this drain on talent. And so there's a way, and that will proliferate, that will spread, that wow, credit unions are fun, exciting places. They might not pay me the most, but you know what? They're going to let me run with my passion and my purpose, and that is a place that I want to work with and work for.
Yeah, I love that. Hearing other people's experiences. I had not heard that before. Nice. Oh,
A plug that was on my first book, YOLO.
oh. We'll definitely include a link to that as well. So to wrap up, what is your hope
Mhm.
for credit unions? And what is your hope during this tour?
Yeah. So my hope, thank you. I love this. My hope for credit unions is to seize the opportunity that presents itself, seize the opportunity of this financial uncertainty and situation that we're in as an opportunity to try something new. And it's not much of an ask. And so for me, that is my hope, that credit unions will actually step up, show up, and deliver on that promise of people helping people. And for me, my hope for this tour is to have these local money conversations and turn it into a national conversation of financial well-being. I want more and more of people's stories of struggle and success to hit the national media's attention. I don't want to just talk about people who are suffering. I want people talking about their successes, because we need to hear those in these times. And so my hope for this is to find these credit union partners to help me make this epic 50 state tour happen. I mean, it's going to happen whether or not I find a credit union or two in each of these states. It will happen. But I do hope that credit unions, for me with this tour, is that they find an opportunity to say, let's do something different. Let's try something else. Let's figure out how we can have these discussions to show how local financial institutions, credit unions, are relevant within the communities they serve by supporting small businesses, these bookstores. And so that is my hope, my ask, and my dream.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for your time, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Good luck on the national tour. And
Thank
like
you
I
so
said,
much.
what are the links? Frugal.com and
Frugal.com, and it's spelled funky, PHROGAL. And you can find me on social media at Jason Vitug to connect, and also LinkedIn. I know many of you are on LinkedIn, so connect on LinkedIn and follow Sarah's newsletter. It's amazing.
thank you.
And so sometimes there's an article that just hits you, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in an interview talking about credit unions and your passion and your history. So you never know. And I definitely encourage you to link up with me on social media, to link up on LinkedIn, and let's continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too.